right, here we go. So basically, what I'm going to be doing here is working my way through this this novel. You can see this short story. You can see here. You're welcome to ask me questions. Oh, thank you, Crimson Oak Shadow, for letting me know that you could hear me. Yeah, asking people to tell me if they could hear me when you can't hear me does not actually work. It turns out weird. Hello, Sam Seaman. All right, so I'm going to work through this. This is a short story that I wrote during my Make Me Write sessions on my Patreon. I've already had comments from my initial readers, from my beta readers. So this is kind of the last pass that I do, which is where I am looking for unplanned repetition, looking for sentences that are just plain awkward, looking for things where I'm like, well, I don't even understand what I mean. And also looking for things like, oh, a ship should be italicized. Here we go. Actually, I'm going to sit down, I think. I usually work with a standing desk, but for some reason, I narrate sitting, so maybe that's why. Heaven's Own Blue. The ocean wind whipped across the deck of the bold explorer and made the humidity manageable. Caroline snapped a photo of the blue-gray horizon where the dawn was turning distant clouds into cotton candy. Sighing, she lowered her camera, letting the strap hold it in place. She was here to work, not play. Caroline pulled up the checklist on her handheld for her next task. She needed to load her camera gear on the submersible. Theoretically, she did not need a checklist for this, but when they were 6,000 meters below the ocean's surface, anything she'd forgotten might as well not exist. As she started back from the cabin, Philippe waved at her from the door to the lab. What I am pausing and thinking about here is that this is the first time I've introduced Philippe, and I don't give him a thing until the chief scientist is down here, and this is me trying to decide if I want to put that in there, but I think this is far enough away. This is close enough that I'm okay with not defining who he is until later. As she started back to her cabin, Philippe waved at her from the door to the lab, which was a surprise considering his attitude about journalists. She jogged over to him, feeling the roll of the ocean beneath her feet. "What's up?" "I want someone else to look at this." The chief scientist for the deep sea mission beckoned her out of the morning sun and into the glow of the monitors. Would she be in the morning sun there? Morning light. The chief scientist for the deep sea mission beckoned her out of the morning light and into the glow of the monitors. "The radar is showing something weird." "Radar, not sonar?" Figures that he only wanted her because the real scientists were not available. Figures that he only wanted her because the real scientists were not available. Never mind that she was older than any of them and had spent more time at sea than all of them combined. We actually don't know. He doesn't say that the real scientists weren't available. So let's have him do that. Thank you, Crimson Oak and Shadow. Yes, I do want to say that. Oh, do I actually enter the glow of the monitors? No, actually, I want to... The way I wrote it is correct because... think. No. Cool. I want someone else to look at this, and everyone else is prepping. The chief scientist for the deep-sea mission beckoned her out of the morning light and into the cool glow of monitors. Nope, it should be the... What is wrong with this? The monitors. The reason I'm avoiding the monitors, the reason I'm like waffling on this one is because the monitors make it very specific, and this is the first time I'm introducing them. Weirdly, I think if I hadn't put cool there, I probably would have been okay. Out of the morning light and into the glow of monitors is fine. And into the cool glow of monitors is not. Interesting. I'll take cool back out. I love editing where I don't actually wind up changing anything. The chief scientist for the deep sea mission beckoned her out of the morning light and into the glow of monitors. Is there just another way I can say that altogether? When I ask rhetorics like this, when I'm saying things like, is there another way I can say this altogether? One, you don't feel like you have to answer me, and two, sometimes it leads me to come up with like just a better way to phrase, a more interesting way to phrase things. And sometimes it's just me overthinking it. I'm going to leave it alone. I'm overthinking. The radar is showing something weird. Radar, not sonar? Figures that he only wanted her because the real scientists were not available. Never mind that she was older than any of them and had spent more time at sea than all of them combined. Philippe nodded, pointing to the monitor on the far wall. Oh, I think I'd planned for him to be French. Which I'm going to do a French accent because that's going to let me spot if I want to change any of his dialogue. Looks like clouds, but it's not showing up on the satellites. She leaned over the monitor, frowning. Caroline had a bachelor's in marine biology, but she was on the ship as a photojournalist. Her job was to capture what the researchers were doing. That ancient college degree. That ancient college degree helped her follow just enough of the science to make good decisions. She raised her camera to snap a photo of the monitor, catching Philippe's face glowing in the background. Maybe a digital artifact? She lowered the camera, looking at the swirls as the radar line swept across it. She lowered the camera, looking at the swirls change as the radar line swept across them, because swirls is plural. Even though I'm fairly confident that I meant the radar line sweeping across the radar, but this is clearer. She had seen a ton of weather radars through her job, so even though she couldn't read the details, but she could see part of what... That sentence is terrible. She had seen a ton of weather radars through her job, so even though she couldn't read the details, she could see part of what was strange. It's moving fast. Yeah, weird, right? Having decided that he's French, he's more likely to say bizarre, which is French. Bizarre, right? Having you tried? Oh my God. I swear to God I've read this before. Have you tried turning it off and back on? She laughed, thinking of her brother's constant refrain in IT. Hell, why not? He flipped the switch, powering down the radar. The glow vanished from his face, leaving shadows under his cheekbones. When he turned it back on, randomly, the swirl was still there and a lot closer. This is why I read it aloud, honestly, because I cannot tell you how many times I've looked at this after getting notes back from beta readers, and I just don't see those things because I gloss over them. Caroline chewed the inside of her lip, looking at the strangeness of it. Should I call Miriam up? Yeah. The ship rolled under them as if a massive swell had tipped them nearly sideways. Caroline staggered, catching her hip on the corner of a table. Philippe grabbed the edge of the radar display. Around them, chairs slid across the deck floor. A coffee mug dropped to the floor and shattered. I'm doing that so that I avoid the repetition of floor so close to each other, and also deck floor is in fact redundant. Around them, chairs slid across the deck. A coffee mug dropped to... What, Guppy? What? I didn't hear you. A coffee mug dropped to the floor and shattered. The ship's... Pets! Pets, you can have pets. Come here. Guppy, come. Mary Robinette give pets. But Mary Robinette working now. For people who don't know, my animals use buttons to talk. Guppy. I can't give you pets over there. You have to come to me. Let's see. A coffee mug dropped to the floor and shattered. The ship stayed at an angle. Caroline lifted her camera to take a photo, but without a view of the outside, it was only a room in disarray. It felt like she was standing on a hill, but it only looked like she was taking a crooked picture. Okay. Hi, sweet girl. Hello, my sweet. Hello. Are you going to be here while I work? Are you going to be so quiet and so good? Yeah. Yeah. Good girl. I know, and nobody can see you. They just can tell that I'm talking to somebody who's adorable. Are you going to lie down quiet and sleepy? Can you be quiet? Can you lie down? Thank you, sweet girl. Thank you. Yeah, Mary Robinette working now. This is quiet time. Single best thing about the buttons is that I can usually negotiate with them. Not always. Okay, what I don't like here is that I've got the same sentence structure. I'm auditioning this. Caroline lifted her camera to take a photo. Without a view of the outside, it only looked like a room in disarray. It felt like she was standing on a hill, but it only looked like... Without a view of the outside, it was just a room in disarray. It felt like she was standing on a hill, but it only looked like she was taking a crooked picture. She turned the camera to Philippe, who gripped the edge of the radar monitor, leaning into it like he was walking into a storm. It was no more than 20 degrees, but it stayed so steady. It was no more than 20 degrees, but the angle stayed so steady. Did we not hit an iceberg? Not in the tropics. Not run aground? Not in deep ocean. She lowered the camera, looking toward the door. The small porthole in the top showed only sky. Horizon should be visible. What don't you like about that? Ugh. Thank you. Thank you, Crimson Oak and Shadow. Let's see. Actually, you know, I'm going to change those back. If I move that there. Without a view of the outside, it was only a room in disarray. It felt like she was standing on a hill, but it looked like she was just taking a crooked picture. Great. I like that. The small portal in the top showed only sky. No, I don't care if there's a thought there. Horizon should be visible. Again, I appreciate you so much, grammar checker, but that is not the way I write. The small portal in the top showed only sky. Horizon should be visible. It had been visible every other time she was in the lab. Caroline worked her way to the door, leaning into the tilt, alert for a change in direction. But the ship stayed at the same inclination. Don't, wait, Caroline, wait. Behind her, Philippe stared at the radar. I have to see it. She didn't need him to tell her what he was looking at. The rate of speed that the swirl was crossing the ocean on the radar had been consistent. Whatever the swirls were, she had to take photos of them. Had been consistent. Let's give some clarity. The rate of speed that the swirl was crossing the ocean had been consistent. Whatever the swirls were, do I care about swirls? I don't. Whatever the swirls were, they were over the ocean now. She had to document it. Document them? No. J. Clark, over or under? Over or under? Oh, good question. Also, I know that this document is that you can comment on it. Please don't comment on it while I'm writing on it, because that will give me problems later. It'll cause the thing to move around. Actually, just that it'll cause problems for you all. Yeah. Let's see, she had to document it. She paused before she got to the door, pulling her phone out and putting it on immediate upload, and then she set her camera to Bluetooth mode. It sucked the battery from both, so she, this setting. Putting it on immediate upload, and then she set her camera to Bluetooth mode. It sucked the battery from both. So she only used this setting, these settings. So she only used these settings when she was in a war zone. But just in case whatever was out there. Oh, I see what I mean. Okay. Just in case whatever was out there, her phone photos would upload to the cloud immediately. I think I'll just remove that. Question from a... That's a great question. Okay. Set her phone to Bluetooth mode. It sucked the battery from both, so she usually only used these settings. That's fine. She usually only used these settings when she was in a war zone. Whatever was out there, her photos would upload to the cloud immediately. They would be safe, even if she wasn't. Her heart was a tight presence in her chest. Her skin felt vibrant and alive with the flush of excitement. She pulled the door open, swinging her camera up to her eye at the same time. Sky. The warm light of dawn softened all the harsh shadows and made the ocean sparkle with flecks of gold. On the uphill side of the ship, a single butterfly rested on the port railing, out of place so far from land. Its vivid blue wings were like a slice of midday. Downhill, she saw only the clean white wall of the lab, and through the window, Philippe's startled, upturned face. Forward and aft, she had the view she wanted. The horizon, accentuating the angle of the ship. The level horizon. I mean, the horizon, yeah, but okay. She had the view she wanted. The level horizon, accentuating the angle of the ship. The sea was smooth, almost like glass. She looked back through the door to the lab. Philippe, the sea is flat. That's not. He staggered up the slope of the ship. What the hell? In the oh, no. You know what I'm going to totally do there? Since I have made the decision that he is French. Heaven's own blue. Sacre bleu. 100% intentional why I titled this. Nah, I'm going to use it someplace else. I know where I'm going to use it. But I like this idea. No. That's not. He staggered up the slope of the ship. What the hell? In the distance, she could hear shouts from the other people aboard the ship. What the hell? In the distance, she could hear shouts from other crew members. Bracing against the wall, she walked aft to the massive crane that would lift the submersibles into the sea. Another blue butterfly, or maybe the same one, flitted in front of her. She rounded the corner, and the slope down to the ship's starboard rail. Made a vertiginous path straight into the sea. The water was a flat steel gray, shot with reflections of rosy pink. Across it danced hundreds of those brilliant blue butterflies. I wonder why you don't like that. And apparently crew members is 2 words. Fine. No. Without thinking, she swapped lenses, reaching for the 6600 zoom through sheer muscle memory. Just FYI, I did not know that it's a 6600. This is a thing I would have had to look up, but I had a beta reader who was a photographer who said this is what they would use, and so I'm like, great! Through sheer muscle memory. Caroline raised the camera, taking photos and trying to capture what she was seeing. Across the deck, one of the crew members was clinging to a pillar and staring up toward the observation platform above them. Across the deck, one of the crew members was clinging to a pillar, staring up toward the observation platform above them. Wow, they're staring up to something above them? Amazing. I see the question about puppetry, and this is not the time for me to answer that. Across the deck. Across the deck, one of the crew members was clinging to a pillar, staring at the observation platform above them. She took a picture of their slackened jaw, butterflies flitting behind them. One rested on their shoulder, blue wings fanning the air. Where had they all come from? A single butterfly might have blown this far from land or survived on a piece of floating driftwood. But a swarm of butterflies, large enough to show on a radar, was inconceivable. Okay, but a swarm of butterflies large enough to show on radar was inconceivable. Sacre bleu! Philippe stood beside her. Holy fuck! They're beautiful. You know what? I'm just going to lose the second one. I'm going to just let him have that. Sacre bleu! Philip stood beside her. They're beautiful. She walked downhill, still trying to capture the wonder of the iridescent glory. No, of their... Excuse me. Their iridescent glory. No. His voice was tight with urgency. He grabbed her arm and pulled her back against the wall. Not them. Eat. What? She lowered the camera a little. Philippe was looking up, in the same direction as the crew member. She tilted her head back, but saw only wall and sky. She tilted her head, but saw only wall and sky. Shrugging him off, she walked back onto the deck. He reached for her and pulled her back. This is so I don't have back there so many times. She tilted her head, but saw only wall and sky. Shrugging him off, she walked away from the wall. Now I have so many walls. Ugh. Wait. This is always the exciting part when I'm trying to solve a problem that is actually not that important. There, are you happy, Crimson and Oak? Crimson Oak and Shadow? That also solves my back problem. What did this? What was that? Hiked? That's totally a word. Okay. She walked downhill, still trying to capture the wonder of their iridescent glory. No, his voice was tight with urgency. He grabbed her arm and dragged her aft against the wall. I'm okay with the number of hers. I'm only noticing them because of how slow I'm going right now. He grabbed her arm and dragged her aft against the wall. Not them eat. What? She lowered the camera a little. Philippe was looking up in the same direction as the crew member. She tilted her head but saw only wall and sky. Shrugging him off, she walked forward onto the deck. He reached for her and pulled her back. Holding the camera with one hand, she grabbed his wrist, trying to break his grip. "Let go!" he hissed. "We have to get back inside." "Fine." She glared at him, letting him think he'd won. "Lead the way." He let go of her, turning to head back into the cabin, to the lab. So while we are being precise, fine. She glared at him, letting him think he'd won. "Lead the way." He let go of her, hugging the wall as he eased his way uphill to the port side of the ship. Rising onto her toes, Caroline moved away from Philippe and the wall, turning as she moved to raise the camera to point upward. Turning as she moved to point the camera upward. Why? Turning as she moved to aim the camera upward. To upward. Great, good. As she moved away from the wall, the angle allowed her to see over and past it to the top of the ship, to the thing that Philippe had seen before taking shelter. I think we have firmly established that it's the wall, and I don't need to say that again. To the thing that Philippe had seen before taking shelter. A massive, impossible butterfly perched on the top of the bridge, feet clinging to the starboard side. The sheer weight of it was enough to tip the boat to the side, and yet somehow the thing must be able to fly. Nothing made sense. A cloud of the smaller butterflies swarmed around it like mist drifting off of it. A smaller cloud of butterflies swarmed like mist drifting off of it. Its wings were the same bright blue as the smaller butterfly and fractured the sun into iridescent glory as they gently shifted with the wind. I think I'm probably using iridescent too many times in this story. I'm going to check that when I'm done. Caroline's breath quickened. It shouldn't exist. It couldn't exist. But the juxtaposition of the hard white lines of the ship against the curve of wing and antenna was one of the most beautiful things she had ever seen. Wings. It does have two wings, and antennae is plural. But the juxtaposition of the hard white lines of the ship against the curve of wings and antenna was one of the most beautiful things she'd ever seen. A part of her knew that she should be afraid. The rest of her just wanted a better shot. Her drones were in her cabin, and she didn't want to leave the deck. The helicopter. If she could get some distance between her and the ship, she could get an aerial view. She fumbled for her cell phone and tried calling their pilot. The phone just rang and rang. Grimacing, she hung up and backed farther away. This part of the ship wasn't big enough to get the distance she wanted. Fine. If she couldn't get far, she could try for a close-up. There were places she could use for cover. She headed for the stairs and the ship bucked. Above her, the butterfly flapped its massive wings. Caroline dropped to her knees as the ship tilted farther to the starboard. She slid toward the sea with nothing to grab on. She slid toward the sea with nothing to grab on. With nothing to grab on the smooth deck. Grab onto on the smooth deck? Grab hold of on the smooth deck? Nothing to stop her? To arrest her descent. Ugh. There's just ambiguity. So this is grammatically fine, to be clear. What I'm pausing about is that there is ambiguity about what this on represents, whether it's going to be with but nothing to grab on, grab onto, or if it's going to be on the smooth deck. We're going to go with hold of. She slid toward the sea with nothing to grab hold of on the smooth deck. I think there's a different problem there. Sometimes I try a fix, I audition something, I'm like, no, that's just differently wrong. And sometimes it is also just me overthinking. She slid toward the sea with nothing to grab on the smooth deck. I think it's the word grab. Without anything to stop her. I tried grab hold of. I didn't like it for some reason. There we go. She slid toward the sea without any way to stop herself on the smooth deck. The butterfly leapt into the air, and without its weight, the ship seemed to spring upward, rocking wildly to port. She heard Philippe scream. She slammed into the rail. Which rail? Which rail are we doing? Okay. All right. What I am noting here is that I'm pretty sure, I know because I know what is happening down there, that I intend her to slide back the other direction. Okay, I'm going to write the bad sentence first. So what I've realized is that I had her sliding towards the starboard rail here, and I don't show that she's reversing course. And so I have a order of information problem. Why don't you think she'd slide back? You know what? I do actually need her on the port side. I was just thinking, oh, she could sprint across the ship, but she would never hear him if she was that far away. Snack. Y'all don't actually have to offer me suggestions. I'm one of the in fact, please do not unless I directly ask for one because it's annoying. Not your fault. But one of the things that happens, there's a saying that for a reader, if something hits you funny, your experience of it is always correct. But when you offer solutions, it's almost always wrong, and that's because we just have different taste. And so, like one of the challenges when you're you're working with a writer is that you've got an idea, and like all of these would actually work. She fell across the deck and all of those, but it's just we don't have the same. Our brains, we just don't have the same taste, the same language, and so what it leads me to is to say, no, not that, and to be like, my hackles raise. This is common across all writers. It's not just me. And I'm not mad about it, to be very clear what's happening over there in the chat. It's just letting you know. The way I think of it is there's symptom diagnosis and prescription for feedback. I just need symptoms. Like letting me know, I don't understand what's happening right now. Great. Those things are fantastic. But diagnosis, a lot of times you don't know what I'm trying to go for. And you don't know the story that I have in my head. So often your diagnosis will be wrong. No, there's no need to apologize. It's just to let you know. Jenna, thank you for letting me know that Sacre Bleu is a really old-fashioned oath and like very grandma. I think in this case, it is actually probably what he would say. Given what he's looking at, and also totally willing to for the joke or whatever it is for the play. Okay, so let me back that up because I think I've okay. Above her, let's see, the ship bucked. Above her, the butterfly flapped its massive wings. Caroline dropped to her knees as the ship tilted farther to the starboard. She slid toward the sea without any way to stop herself on the smooth deck. The butterfly leapt into the air, and without its weight, the ship seemed to spring upward, rocking wildly to port, and she tumbled with the motion. The butterfly leapt into the air, and without its weight... No, there we go. Lose that and... The butterfly leapt into the air. Without its weight, the ship seemed to spring upward, rocking wildly to port, and she tumbled with the motion back the way she'd come. She heard Philippe scream. Caroline slammed into the port rail, hitting the solid metal with a thunk that drove the breath from her body. Gasping, she... many times? Pitch. Okay. Gasping, she lay on her back as the ship pitched underneath her. Rocked. Goodness. Pitching there. Rocking there. Okay. Without its weight, the ship seemed to spring upward, pitching wildly to port, and she tumbled with the motion back the way she'd come. She heard Philippe scream. Caroline slammed into the port rail, hitting the solid metal with a thunk that drove the breath from her body. Gasping, she lay on her back as the ship rocked underneath her as if they were in a storm. Do I care about the number of as's in that? I do not. I do. Gasping, she lay on her back while the ship rocked underneath her as if they were in a storm. Above, the huge butterfly flapped its wings, driving a gust of wind down. One photo, two, not even knowing what she was framing. Then on her knees, still shooting, but without the ship, it was impossible to capture the scale. The smaller butterflies looked like a digital distortion. "Help," Philippe yelled, his voice distant and distorted. "Help," Philippe yelled, his voice distant and strained. The part of her brain that had trained shooting sea battles... The part of her brain that had been trained while shooting sea battles knew that particular screen. screams, she dropped the camera, letting the strap catch it. "Man overboard!" Caroline shouted as she ran for the rail. "Man overboard!" Step 1. Get eyes on the victim. She scanned the slate-gray water until she spotted him as the only spot of turbulence and water. She scanned the slate-gray ocean until she spotted him as the only spot of turbulence and water flattened by the wind from the butterfly's wings. Thank God they were at a standstill, or he would be far behind the ship by now. It was just the current that was pulling him away from the ship. It was pulling him away. We don't need the from the ship. "Man overboard!" she screamed again. Step 2. Get a flotation device to him. Keeping her eyes on him. Keeping her eyes on Philippe. It's an impossible word to spell. Keeping her eyes on Philippe, she walked along the rail until her fingers brushed a life preserver lashed to the inside rail. Keeping her eyes on Philippe, she walked aft until her fingers brushed a life preserver lashed to the inside rail. Without blinking, Caroline untied it. She slung the camera around to her back and hoisted the life preserver. "Philippe! Incoming!" She flung it as hard as she could, knowing it wouldn't reach him. The bright orange and white ring flew through the air and splashed into the water at least 20 feet from him. The shadow of the butterfly passed over him, and she did not look away. Looking away from a man overboard was a good way to lose the person in the vastness of the ocean. Toward her right, she felt more than saw a crew member barreling around the forward end of the ship. She pointed to where Philippe was swimming toward the ring. In the periphery of her vision, the butterfly and its attending swarm were winging upward into the sky. Her camera burned on her back, begging her to lift it and take just one photo. There were other people now. He had the life preserver. And the chop was starting to come back into the water. She stayed by the side of the ship, pointing at him, so that the crew members. She stayed by the side of the ship, pointing at him, so that the crew members who were appearing. I already said that. No, there were other people now. I've established. I'll just lose. There we go. She stayed by the side of the ship, pointing at him so that the crew could concentrate. I don't need that. It's one of the words I overuse. She stayed by the side of the ship, pointing at him so the crew could concentrate on lowering a rescue team to him. I'm going to go ahead and specify. She stayed by the side of the ship, pointing at Philippe so the crew could concentrate on lowering a rescue team to him. She didn't look away until they had him. Then she swung the camera back around and took 2 shots of the butterfly, which looked tiny in the distance. She crouched, aiming at the rail for the moment when Philippe's head appeared. Sopping wet, with reddened cheeks, his face made a haggard foreground for the butterfly. It appeared no larger than the one that had it lit on the railing. The crew members who helped him over the rail were alert and serious. They concentrated on helping the man in front of them instead of the wonder that was flying away. As Philippe tumbled over the rail and back onto the deck of the ship, he looked up at her. She took a photo of him, crumpled on the deck, water pooling around him. His brows were drawn together with something like hurt. "Tell me you didn't stop taking photos." She lowered the camera, not pointing out that she had stopped while she'd been watching him, because she understood the rush and drive of finding something new. It would break him to know that he'd been the reason they didn't have a complete record of the butterfly, despite the fact that he was trying to stop her from doing that earlier. rolling back up. Okay. Photos, yes, but from somewhere safe. Okay, great. Tell me you didn't stop taking photos. She lowered the camera, not pointing out that she had stopped while she'd been watching him, because she understood the rush and drive of finding something new. It would break him to know that he'd been the reason they didn't have a complete record of the butterfly. Caroline crouched in front of him. Are you okay? It would break him to think that he'd been the reason. Because, in fact, he is not the reason. Caroline crouched in front of him. Are you okay? Fine. He had a gash down one arm and a scrape along his cheek. Rising to his knees, he turned to look across the ocean at the impossible butterfly. What the hell was that? It was why she'd become a photojournalist. She wanted to be out in the world, discovering new things instead of sitting at a desk writing grants and teaching, punctuated by brief, glorious spates at sea. She took another photo, zooming in as far as she could. Her camera gave a low battery warning beep. Sighing, she cradled the camera against her body. Caroline stared at the butterfly as it winged toward the horizon, trying to hold the moment in her memory. Iridescent wings surrounded by a swirling haze of blue as the dawn sky brightened to match. Impossible. Beautiful. She had come here to capture the sea, but she had been captured by the sky. Great. Thank you. So now I'm going to look at how many times did I use the word iridescent. I used it 3. That's 3 times. This is what we call a thesaurus word, or an SAT word, and like 3 times in a 2,200 word story is actually kind of a lot. Ooh, wow. Iridescent glory. No wonder, because I used that phrase twice. Welcome as we go to my favorite, Rhyme Zone. Is that how you spell this? Yes. No. I've never heard that word before. Opalescent, pearlescent, that does not... Nacreous is not a pretty word. Prismatic, however. I like prismatic. Lustrous is also a good one. And the other thing that I love about Rhyme Zone is that you can say, find descriptive words. And so it gives you these other, and sometimes you can find something in here that will give you another phrase. All right, so we got a couple of loaded into my brain. Let's come back and take a look. There are two that I liked. Luster is the only one that's sticking in my brain right now. La 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 la. So, oops. Oh, I hate, this is the part of the thing I like. Because prismatic and then glory is now my problem word. Could I come up with this word without doing the rhyme zone? 100%. Is it significantly faster? Also, glorification. Oh my god. Ooh, nimbus is also good too. Ooh, aura. Let me check that because I think that may be too much. A cloud of the smaller butterflies swarmed like mist drifting off of it. Its wings were the same bright blue as the smaller butterflies and fractured the sun into a prismatic aura as they gently shifted with the wind. Actually, I kind of like that. So here's one of the things when you're thinking about adjectives, adverbs, etc., and so forth. One of the ways that you avoid purple prose is that you think about where you want to focus things. And in this case, so when you use adjectives, adverbs, modifiers, clauses, what you're doing is you're causing the reader to literally spend more time reading about a thing. So when you focus something, when you're editing for focus, what you do is you want to make sure that you're putting the bulk of the description on the thing that you actually want them to look at, the more interesting words on the thing that you want them to look at. So what is, since I'm now really overthinking things, what I'm pausing to think about is if I want to remove bright. And I think I do. A cloud of the smaller butterflies swarmed like mist drifting off of it. A cloud of the smaller butterflies formed an azure mist around it. Its wings were the same blue as the smaller butterflies and fractured the sun into a prismatic aura. Azure and aura. Hey, a cloud formed a mist? Amazing. Ugh. What did I have there before? Because I think I just fixed something. A cloud of the smaller butterflies swarmed like azure mist drifting off of it. Its wings matched their bright blue and fractured the sun into a prismatic aura as they gently shifted with the wind. Okay, I'm essentially describing the same thing twice here. Does this bother me? Sometimes. So this is again a thing where I am deeply overthinking it. So when I say I'm describing the same thing, it's not that I'm using cloud or mist. It's that so sometimes you do describe the same thing more than once, in the same way that in a film sometimes you see something from multiple angles, see the same moment, and it's a way of elongating and exaggerating a moment. What I'm doing right now is I'm checking to make sure that I'm doing that on purpose and not the other thing that will happen to a writer, which is that you will describe something twice while you're trying to find the perfect description of it. So that's what I'm pausing right now to see, like, is this a problem? I've identified that I'm describing it twice. I think there we go. And the other thing that I'm looking at is there's something called recency primacy effect. So right now, and again, seriously overthinking this. Right now, when you have recency primacy, the most recent thing that you read or see or experience is one of the things that sticks with you most. So you want to put something most important there. And there's also something that I call circling, which is where you hit something and then you circle around and you hit it again. And so right now, having it stop with it, which had been bothering me, but I hadn't been able to identify why. I thought maybe it was because I had these two next to each other, which is probably some of that. But if I change that, So now I'm hitting it twice, and that becomes more purposeful. And azure, a cloud of the smaller butterflies swarmed around it like drifting mist. Better. You see why it's better? Its wings matched their bright blue and fractured the sun into a prismatic aura as they gently shifted with the wind. Great. Okay, so let me check that other iridescent, see if it bothers me now. I've only got 2. And I think that callback to the original iridescent is actually okay at this point. Yes, I have changed what is doing the fracturing. Yeah, I'm okay with having iridescent in there twice now. It's far enough away and it feels like a callback at that point because it's right at the very end and it calls back to the first time she saw it. Okay, well, there you go. So the next thing that will happen with this is that I will do a who's what's it do a thing where I remove all of this stuff up at the top, create a clean draft, and then submit that sucker and then see what happens. So thank you all so much for joining me. This is what my process is often like. Do you have any questions before I go? This is where I sip lukewarm cocoa to give you time. Yes. Thank you, Jay Clark. So if you are interested, on my website, I have a link to classes, and one of the classes is on revisions, and it talks about this kind of thing in much more detail. Also, if you enjoyed this, please join my Patreon. Mary Robinette Cole / patreon.com, or no, patreon.com/Mary Robinette. If you go to my website and sign up for my newsletter, then you get all of this information. But if you are interested, this is one of the things what I do on a regular basis for my beta readers. They got to hear me read the entirety of The Martian Contingency, for instance. Kaiten, speaking of solid SAT words, thank you for recommending Charlotte Ellis. Amazing. I loved it. And I'm so glad you did. I don't think I'm saying the last name right. You got snow up in Loveland. Yep, there was snow happening earlier in this area too, yeah. Great, I'm so glad it was interesting. All right, thank you all so much. Have a good day.